Hello, Fallout friends and fellow adventurers, and welcome back to Road Chippin. I'm Brian McLaughlin, or better known to all of you as Chipmunk, your guide to the wild and wondrous world of real-world Fallout locations. In the episode you're about to view, I will embark on a journey to a location that holds a significant place in both Fallout lore and real-world history. Known in the game as Fort Defiance, it stands as a crumbling bastion against the scourge of the Scorched Plague. But in reality, it's the Trans-Allegheny Asylum, a place with a complex and often troubling past. In researching this episode, I learned of a history that demands our respect and sensitivity. Built in an era when the understanding of mental health was fraught with misunderstanding and stigma, the asylum's legacy is marked by tragedy. It's essential that we approach this subject with the gravity and compassion that it deserves. As we delve into the depths of this location's past, I aim to provide a balanced perspective, offering context to its role in the Fallout universe, while acknowledging the real-world hardships endured within its walls. However, after paying homage to its history, we'll look specifically at its portrayal in the game, but we'll do so making sure we tread lightly on potentially sensitive ground. I want to make it unequivocally clear that my intention is not to cause harm or offense to those affected by mental health issues or the dark chapters of our shared history. Rather, I want to celebrate the spirit of exploration and discovery that defines both Fallout 76 and my Road Chippin adventures, while remaining mindful of the realities, even the sometimes unpleasant ones, surrounding these locations. Thank you for your understanding and for joining me on this journey. Let's dive into the story of the Trans-Allegheny Asylum and experience the mysteries of Fort Defiance together. In the mid-19th century, the Commonwealth of Virginia recognized the urgent need for a facility to care for the mentally ill in its western regions. Thus, construction began on what would become the Trans-Allegheny Asylum, a grand Gothic revival structure designed by architect Richard Andrews. Andrews envisioned a state-of-the-art facility that would provide a therapeutic environment for the treatment of mental illness. His design incorporated innovative features including the Kirkbride system, a revolutionary approach to asylum architecture. The Kirkbride system, named after psychiatrist Dr. Thomas Kirkbride, was based on the principles of moral treatment. It emphasized natural light, fresh air, and spacious surroundings to promote healing and rehabilitation. The asylum's main building, with its imposing central tower and wings extending outward, was a hallmark of the Kirkbride design. It's worth noting that this distinctive architectural design was nicknamed the Batwing, and if you look at images from above, it certainly resembles a bat in flight. I find this to be an amazing coincidence for the asylum's role in our very own Fallout 76, and I can't help but to wonder if it inspired the designers in any way to have it as their location for the Line in the Sand event in the game, as that's where a Scorch Beast, which we all know resembles a bat, takes flight. Upon its completion in 1864, the asylum stood as a beacon of hope for those suffering from mental illness in the region. Patients were welcomed into a serene environment where they could engage in therapeutic activities and receive compassionate care. In the early years of operation, the asylum adhered closely to the principles of moral treatment. Patients participated in meaningful work, such as farming or crafts, as part of their therapy. They also enjoyed recreational activities such as gardening or attending social events to foster a sense of normalcy and community. However, despite its noble intentions, the asylum faced numerous challenges in its early years. Overcrowding was a persistent issue as demand for mental health care outpaced the facility's capacity. Additionally, funding shortages often led to inadequate staffing and resources, straining the asylum's ability to provide quality care. Nevertheless, the asylum remained a beacon of hope for those in need, offering sanctuary and support to countless individuals struggling with mental illness in the region. As we reflect on this chapter of the asylum's history, let us remember the vision of Richard Andrews and the principles of moral treatment that guided the early years of the Trans-Allegheny Asylum. Their intentions were noble, and indeed their hearts were in the right place. But the complexities of mental health treatment were vastly misunderstood at the time and only in their infancy. So as good-intentioned as the addition of the asylum to West Virginia may have been, it would soon succumb to improper and sometimes dangerous treatments and outcomes, which was not at all uncommon for mental health treatment in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. As the 20th century dawned, the landscape of mental health care began to shift. Advances in psychiatric treatment, including the introduction of psychotherapy and psychotropic medications, offered new hope for patients at the Trans-Allegheny Asylum. The asylum adapted to these changes, incorporated new treatment modalities into its programs. Occupational therapy, art therapy, and recreational activities became integral components of patient care, providing opportunities for healing and self-expression. Yet the 20th century also brought its own set of challenges. Economic hardships such as the Great Depression placed additional strain on the asylum's resources, exacerbating existing issues of overcrowding and underfunding. Despite the challenges, the asylum remained committed to its mission of providing compassionate care to those in need. The mid-20th century brought its own set of grim challenges. Overcrowding plagued the asylum, with patient populations far exceeding the facility's capacity. By the 1950s, the patient population soared to nearly 2,000 in a facility built for no more than 200. This overcrowding led to deplorable living conditions as patients were crammed into crowded wards with limited access to basic amenities. In the face of overwhelming demand and limited resources, the asylum resorted to severe treatments such as electroconvulsive therapy and lobotomies. These treatments, while intended to alleviate symptoms of mental illness, often resulted in profound suffering and long-term damage for patients. Furthermore, the asylum's history is marked by instances of institutional abuse and neglect. Reports of physical and emotional mistreatment, as well as substandard living conditions, paint a disturbing picture of life within the asylum walls. Despite efforts by dedicated staff members to provide compassionate care, the asylum's institutionalized environment often perpetuated cycles of trauma and suffering for its vulnerable patients. In the midst of these challenges, societal attitudes towards mental illness began to evolve. Advocacy groups emerged, shining a light to the injustices and abuses within the mental health care system and calling for systemic reform. However, change came slowly, and it wasn't until the latter half of the 20th century that significant reforms were enacted. The advent of deinstitutionalization in the 1960s and 1970s marked a turning point in mental health care, as policymakers sought to transition patients from institutional settings to community-based care, with the intention of promoting independence and integration. However, the rapid closure of psychiatric institutions often left patients without adequate support systems, leading to homelessness and incarceration for some. The Trans-Allegheny Asylum grappled with the implications of deinstitutionalization, striving to adapt to changing societal norms and legislative reforms. By the 1990s, the asylum's population had declined significantly and its role in mental health care had diminished. In 1994, the Trans-Allegheny Asylum closed its doors for good, marking the end of an era in mental health care in West Virginia. In 2007, the Trans-Allegheny Asylum found itself at a crossroads when it was purchased by a private investor, Joe Jordan of Morgantown. This marked a new chapter in the asylum's history as efforts were made to preserve its rich heritage and open its doors to the public once more. Under new ownership, the asylum underwent extensive restoration efforts to repair and preserve its historic buildings and grounds. Guided tours were introduced, allowing visitors to explore the asylum's labyrinth corridors and learn about its fascinating past. In addition to guided tours, the asylum began hosting a variety of events and activities ranging from paranormal investigations to historical reenactments. These events drew visitors from far and wide, eager to experience the allure of this hauntingly beautiful landmark. As the asylum gained popularity as a tourist destination, efforts were also made to honor its legacy and raise awareness about mental health issues. Educational programs and exhibits were developed to shed light on the history of mental health care and challenge the stigma surrounding mental illness. Today, the Trans-Allegheny Asylum stands as a testament to the enduring resilience of the human spirit. Its grand architecture and storied past continue to captivate visitors, while its commitment to mental health advocacy remains unwavering. As we reflect on this chapter of our history and that of the Allegheny Asylum, let us remember the importance of preserving our heritage and promoting compassion and understanding for those living with mental illness. Now, let's visit the Trans-Allegheny Asylum and see its place in Fallout 76 as Fort Defiance. Okay, folks, so now that you've learned all about the Trans-Allegheny Asylum and have some real-world historical context for its place in Fallout 76, let's take a closer look at it strictly as to how it relates to the game and discover its role as the Brotherhood of Steel's stronghold where they made their desperate and fateful stand against the Scorched, right down to the last Brotherhood knight who, with a hearty ad victoriam and a steel be with you, raised his minigun aloft. Oh gosh! What was that? Ah! Oh, phew! Yuck! No good, Scorch Beasts. Oh, don't worry, folks. You won't run into any angry Scorch Beasts determined to ruin your day when you come to visit. Only friendly and awesome tour guides ready to take you on a journey you won't soon forget. So here we are at the main entrance of the asylum. Notice the pillars and how they match exactly to the in-game version. Mind you, no suits of power armor laying around, but that's okay. I don't think I'll be needing one. I hope. Now, the particular night I visited, I wasn't able to take the tour as there were some special tours going on at the time. But don't worry, we'll get to see plenty of images from the many people who have visited and photographed the interior of this amazing building. So what do you say? Ready to check out Fort Defiance? Let's do this! Now in the game, Fort Defiance is in a crumbling state of decay, as it certainly would be in a post-apocalyptic and scorch-plagued world. But in the real world, the foyer and much of the surrounding areas have been beautifully restored to their Victorian splendor and greet you when you first enter the asylum. But when touring the asylum, you will see that much of it has not been restored and remains in a state of decay that began when the asylum, or Weston State Hospital as it was at the time, closed down in 1994. This is certainly what inspired the artists and designers to recreate for the game, as it simply lends itself to the mood and feel they were going for to make Fort Defiance the crumbling Brotherhood bastion that we see when exploring it as Wastelanders. A number of the treatment rooms that were left abandoned still have the appliances and fixtures from many years gone by, and as you can see, they were faithfully recreated by the designers to add even more detail and make the environment foreboding and downright spooky. As you wander the halls in both Fort Defiance in the game and the Trans-Allegheny Asylum in the real world, you'll notice various color schemes in different wings. Patient rooms and common areas match perfectly with their in-game counterparts, and the designers were quite faithful in matching the color schemes. In addition to the main structures of the buildings, various appliances and furniture, The designers found inspiration in some of the details the owners of the Trans-Allegheny Asylum have added to help create a more chilling atmosphere, and clearly these did not go unnoticed. I'll take the bear, but you guys keep the doll, okay? Yeah. So now that you've had a glimpse of the inside, let's walk around the grounds and get a closer look at the magnificent mid-19th century Victorian architecture of this massive building, which, by the way, is the largest hand-cut stone masonry building in all of North America. The stonework is typical of many of the large buildings you see in nearby larger cities like Pittsburgh or Charleston, and is probably pretty familiar to people from the East and Midwest areas. But rarely do you see buildings from the period of this size. It is truly a remarkable structure for its time, considering it was constructed in the early 1860s. Now notice the in-game version and how closely the designers match the details, like the offset bricks that decorate the corners of the towers and the decorative stonework above the windows. They're spot on. So come on, let's get a closer look. As you walk around the building, you'll spot all kinds of interesting Victorian architectural accents unique to buildings like this one. The towers are classically Victorian in style and were expertly replicated in the game, making this location so wonderfully represented in the game and allowing it to bring a real-world layer to players familiar with the asylum. Everywhere you go as you explore the grounds, you'll see parts of the building you immediately recognize from the game experience. I can't express how much of a joy it is to discover these places and inspect the details for yourself. It makes the game so much more immersive, and it makes you really appreciate the amazing work the game designers and artists did to bring it to life. Now, not everything is a perfect match, but the things that don't match exactly, like this old staircase and side entrance, still have their in-game counterparts. Yep, the in-game staircase is a little shorter, but it's super cool that it's in the exact same place in the real world as it is in the game. And if you ask me, that's pretty darn cool. Pretty darn cool. Heading back to the front of the grounds and coming to the edge of the property at the main street, you'll discover the familiar wrought iron fence that borders the asylum grounds, very much like it does in the game. Now, the in-game version is a little more ornate and actually somewhat taller, as it is part of what is more like a wall. But in reviewing historical images, that is exactly what predated the current version that you see here now. And where is the main gate, you might be asking? Well, it used to be at the head of the main walkway here, right off the sidewalk. But as you can see, very little of it remains. But notice in this historical image, you can see this is what the in-game gate and wrought iron fence is actually based on, right down to those diamond designs in the columns. The real-world gate existed here in the 1950s, so it ties in really well to the art of Fallout. Well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed visiting Fort Defiance, or in the real world, the Trans-Allegheny Asylum. Ah! Leave me alone! Leave me alone! Trying to do a travel show here! Shoot! Go away! Anyway, come visit the asylum for yourself and learn all about its history and discover what made it such an inspiring location for the awesome Bethesda designers who brought it beautifully to life for all of us to experience. Oh, and again, no scorched beasts, so bring a picnic and enjoy a beautiful day at this one-of-a-kind West Virginia historical site. If you'd like to visit the asylum, here's all the information you'll need. If you'd like more information on the Trans-Allegheny Asylum and its history, please visit these informative sites. If you'd like more information on mental health and mental health care, here are some fantastic resources.